This is Neil King for Random Acts of Cartooning, and I'm going to do a commission of The Incredibles. But first... Okay, the influence for this episode is Big Guy and Rusty the Boy Robot. So this is a classic. This is Frank Miller and Geof Darrow. And I don't know how long Darrow was around, but he must have been around for a certain amount of time. But his style is very specific, and whenever you see one of his books, whether he's writing it or illustrating, you can't miss it. So the big thing about it is the heavy line on the exterior of the images, and then the crazy detail when you get closer. So the book is, this big monster book. And it's just this great sense of action. And there's all types of balance with this. But look at how all of these beautiful images are made. But you can see how the dark line, pretty strong line, and then the thinner line goes on the inside. And then he just has this unbelievable amount of detail. And you just love how he contrasts things, the way he sets up panels. And Miller's great at this. This is 95, so this is still Miller, kind of the top of his game. Still, he's in his prime. Just doing some really beautiful things with this. And it just gets crazier and crazier. And to look at each one of these panels, it's just a wonder how he's done all of these things. But he does double spreads. And the colors are just so great with this. It's not muddy. Nothing's taken away from that line. Everything that goes on to it, even scenes like this, you're really drawn into it. About everything that goes in. And he did a bunch of these, and he's had his own separate comics and things. I'll show more of those as time goes on. But just the sense of drama and a unique vision of comics. It's really beautiful stuff. This is I don't know if this is one of the big ones of his career, but I always loved it. Okay, for this commission, I'm using another titled 11 by 17 watercolor piece of paper that I have with the Incredibles logo on the top. I have the speed up on this one, so when I'm doing the sketches on this and the finishes, I just tried to speed it up to see and show everybody where I'm going with this. With everything, I'm just showing big shapes. There's a lot of figures in this piece, so I'm just blocking them in first with my pencils just to make sure it's right. Once I've got them all blocked in, it doesn't mean that that's the exact way that they're going to look, but now the second level of it is just trying to get the characters in the right positions, but also now looking at what they're wearing, the costumes. I'm always going to do it in my style. I'm trying to keep it close to what these characters look like. I don't want them necessarily not to be able to be recognized, for this one at least. And so yeah, like the great thing about these characters, they're really well designed and from a great movie, The Incredibles. And this commission, one of the people who wanted it, they wanted to have them all kind of in a little battle. So I feel like the entire piece took a little bit longer than about an hour to do. So that's kind of like the max of these kind of sketches that I do for conventions. And if I'm at a convention, I never spend more than probably 20 minutes to a half an hour on one. So when I'm doing these things, I just want to kind of keep them loose and have fun with it. Try to keep somewhere close to what the characters look like, but again, doing them the way I would do them. And even in this part of it, this pencil part, I know that when I do my inks on top, I'll probably tighten up the faces and make them look a little bit more like the actual characters from the animated film look. But for this, you really do have to kind of lay in all the characters first, and now with the details and hair is a certain kind of way. I don't want it to be too far off of what they do, and I can easily at times wind up doing my own type of a feeling for them. But with this, I don't want to get too far away from it. And I'm just laying this in really quickly, as you can see. Most of the pencils are there. I'll have a little indication of a background on there. And now I'm going into, with my brush pens, these are those Pentel pens, and I do really like this one for the fine detail. I didn't go to my my fountain pen for this. I wanted to keep the lines nice and thick. And again, I've sped this up, so this is not how fast I draw, but sometimes I feel like I'm drawing this fast. But it does look, you want to have that line nice and strong, especially for these kind of characters. And this is when, for me, I want to make sure that I get the little bits of detail that's going to make it look a little more like that character than too much of a change, I'm sure, for anybody who wants this to be done. I think they're looking for something that kind of looks like them. So I'm just trying to get all those gestures down. I'm tightening up all of the little lines. Again, this is sped up twice, so you can see, how I'm kind of laying that in. And because there's a lot of characters, a lot of things going on, I'm just got to be aware of where things are going to end. And the paper is pretty good. It's like a 90-pound multi-media kind of paper, so it holds on to the both ink and the watercolor. So again, I'm trying to keep as little sketchiness as I can with this, especially since these are characters that you would see on in film. So a lot of the line is super clean with them. But I'm trying to also make sure that they work well together. So each one of them kind of has a specific look. And again, since it's a sketch, I don't want to, this is not, if I'm going to do a piece like this, I want it to be as good as I can make it, but I also am not doing something that I would spend even more time on backgrounds and maybe go over all of the ways that the characters are interacting. Like, I wanted to make it look really nice, but I don't also want to spend too much time, because then it's not a sketch anymore. It's just it's a really finished design, and I don't want these to be like that. If I'm going to do this kind of work, they're not my characters, and I want that to look nice for the patron for these kind of things, but I don't also want it to be something that becomes more than what it is. And sketches, whenever you're doing a sketch for somebody, I think that's what it should be. Something that people can, they like your style, or they like what you're kind of doing, and I'm going to try to do that for them with this. And all these characters are just, beautiful characters, and people have done lots of images, their own stylization of these things. So for me, I want to add something to it in a little bit of a degree, but I also realize that this should be something that is fun, and it's not overdone. That for me to take too much time on it, because again, these aren't my characters. I spend that kind of time with the things that I do for myself. So anyway, so I think I'm trying to add some of the parts that I think make them look a little more like themselves. I'm making like this. I guess Mr. Incredible, a little thicker, and not so, like, I love how they have them on the animated piece, but I'm trying to. He looks to me a little more Kirby-like with this one, and I just want to make him big, and this thick character. He's out there in the front. I'm trying to keep the logo somewhere close to what it actually is. So when you see these kind of things, like it's tough because it's a beautiful logo and all that stuff. But again, here we are. I'm doing a sketch, and I don't want to labor over some of those types of details. And if you're just watching this, you could see it's pretty. I do draw fast. I don't draw this fast. So now you can see these characters are close to each other. So I'm trying to keep the design so that they work together. And I'm just kind of moving along with it. You could see like I have some open space and around. Like I'm just trying to move around it so that it's not too bundled up with all these characters running around. The kid characters are kind of, to me, almost secondary characters with this, so I want them there, and they're super cool, and I really do like the design of them also, but I have them off a little to the side for this, and again, just trying to make sure that I keep the costumes pretty close to what they actually are. And he's the speedster, the boy, and so I just, have him running off to the side. Again, you can see with some of this, if you keep your line consistent with this, I just think it has a little bit of a nicer final look to it. Like this character's it's just super, they're very young, but they're very, super skinny characters. So I want to try to keep the motion with that one as nice as I can. The fingers are almost like a silhouette. So yeah, I'm really going in. And those, everything's so tiny for some of these things, but I do want to keep it kind of close. I keep checking myself on that thing to make sure I'm pretty close. Lots of motion. Just kind of blowing through this. Make sure everybody's in the right place. He has a cape. These are all the kinds of things you have to really be looking for. And that's usually the first ink part. And then I'll go in with my thicker brush pen to get a little bit more of the dry brush feel. And for me, this is the preliminary to what I'm going to do with my the colors, with my watercolor when I go on top. So I go in and get those darks on there as consistently as I can, leaving some highlights and all. You can see on the outsides I leave some highlights, and then I just add some more parts. The good thing about that brush is you are really contrasting some of the thinner line with it. And they're so well designed, like their gloves for the Incredibles, they're all black. So it's a red costume, but because it's kind of shiny, like sometimes they'll do stuff with that. But for mine, I'd like to keep. Sometimes they'll keep it completely black, but I tend to leave a little highlight on the top so I can do something with a color on that. Maybe make it a warm color instead of just black. So you can see the highlight would be that color. And for her, the elastic one, she's she's kind of like the Reed Richards kind of character, and you want to, you don't want that kind of character. I always didn't like the elongated man. I always thought it made him look goofy. Like whenever Kirby did Mr. Fantastic, and he never made him look goofy as a stretching character. So I wanted to try and make sure that she's the way that they have her in the film is really kind of a sophisticated kind of a figure, and she never looks like a clown or some kind of thing. That's, with a long neck and things like that. They really did a really nice job with her. So as you can see, like they all have these contrasts. Like every costume is very balanced, really well thought out. Character design, as always for Pixar. So I'm just going in with these darkest areas, trying to make sure I see them. And when you have it like this, it's so much easier to squint your eyes and you look for the balance and make sure everything's kind of there. So I'll put in just little indications of the a background, so it just kind of puts them in some place. I could have gone silhouettes, but I was thinking maybe I could just, I don't want to get it too dark for something that's animated. Maybe if this was like a Batman one, I would do it. But the very, very back, I'll put a little silhouette, but in the kind of the foreground, I'm just going for enough contrast that you can see that they have a background and it doesn't impede you looking at those characters in the front. Little power stuff from her. Again, these are just all the little touches. I'm just making my way through. Hey everyone, as always, I always remind everyone that I am a working cartoonist. So the whole point of doing my episodes is to get everybody to go to my Amazon store and buy a bunch of the books that I make. So I have all kinds of different types of books, whether it's for all ages, like Who Stole All the Heads at the Met, and all kinds of books like this, Snowmen in the Springtime, fun contemplation of what would happen if snowmen survived into the spring. And then these are some older ones that I really think a lot of kids would like. Monsters in the Box. There's 4 different books that are collected in here. You get all this on Amazon. I have all the links in the episode. And as always, I'm here doing my sketches. I do conventions and everything, and I do all kinds of commissions. So these are the kinds of pieces that I do. So always contact me about that or look for me at some of the local conventions that you're involved in. But make sure you're liking and subscribing. Okay, so on to the color. Semi-moist watercolors. And again, this is a commission, but it is a sketch commission. So it's not something for a company where you're trying to do a very flat, continuous image that you want to make sure is painted and the whole background is a specific thing. As a sketch, you do want something to convey foreground and background. And for me, I'm just going to try to get as much of this in as I can. So I'm just going to do the faces and stuff, all these flesh tones, comic book flesh tones, kind of pinkish. But all these things I try to do pretty flat. I'm not going in there and putting too much variety in there yet, because I do know as I go across and I keep going, I'm going to add way more value, and especially darker areas when I go in with black and everything. So for the characters, I just want to start putting those just base colors on them. It's almost like the equivalent to flats when you're doing in Photoshop. You're just kind of getting a nice light value that you can always build on eventually. So they do have red costumes, so I don't go in super red with them. I do a really light value of it as much as I can, and then I'm just making my way through. Each one of them have similar costumes, so I can just go in and do each one. As you can see, even with the boots and everything, I'm going to add, instead of allowing those to be white, I will make them red, and then I'll eventually go on top of them with black. So it seems like they're just a warm gray eventually. But when you do this part, you just want to go from light to dark. And if you're using your watercolors, you're just kind of getting that feeling. I don't want it to be too fire engine red and all that, so I want a little variety. And that's kind of what you do on your first go round. when you have the watercolor on there. So everybody's got that little bit on their costume. I know I will go back in there and touch those things up eventually. So you can see a little deeper. I can do that on all of them. Gives variety. And eventually I'll put other colors on top of those colors so that it just it's unified. Now for him, he has this kind of yellow-orange hair, and the rest, a couple of them have blonde hair. The Elastigirl, I think she has brown hair. So when I'm putting these yellows in, I'll just put little parts of it everywhere. So it's not the only place that you're going to see that yellow. Then there's more of a yellow-orange for the other part. I'll make that more and more yellow-orange, so it's not just yellow. You can see in his hair, I'm trying to do that. And again, it's when you see a color like that, it's so strong that you have to kind of use it in different places, or all you'll do is look at that one place where it's that yellow-orange. So all the colors after it are going to have to mute it down a little bit, or that you'll see something else just as strong. So with his powers, he has this kind of cyan kind of color coming out of his hands, and so he has a very white costume with black, and then he's got a blue cape. So for this, I want to lay in some of these things to bring you, the power thing around, and then just, brings your eye around also for the overall composition. I'm adding a different blue for his cape, and again, that's the design they have has a deeper blue, and it's not like the color blue of the energy blasts, I guess, that you have off of him. You can see I'm using a little blue everywhere, and it just creates unity, whether it's in that face or whether it's in the background. Varieties of violet and purples, all those magentas, and I think those are all very comic booky, so I'm just kind of throwing those in to give you a little bit of a background. And this is the kind of watercolor effect that I like for a sketch, because it just keeps it really light, and it's not, again, it's not Batman here or some type of a very darker character where you're like, oh, I really want it to look scarier. I want it to be still kind of loose and comic book feeling, or animated image like they have in the movie. So now I'm adding a little black, and when you see it, now you'll really see even more contrast with the characters. I want to leave some parts with the true colors I have, but once you start putting these in, you'll see it does give a little bit more sense of depth and drama. So again, adding some, not overdoing it. I don't want them to be too dark, and you're so close to overdoing it all the time, so I'm trying not to. I wanted to keep it pretty bright. And with him in the background, I didn't want to allow it to be too light, so I'm kind of using a burst. And the way I'm bursting it is I'll come off of him, and it's almost like a motion line that's going kind of towards him. And again, it'll just kind of set a value back there, and I think it makes it a little more interesting as a sketch, instead of it just being, I could have made it completely black. I don't think I needed to do that. So again, I'm kind of moving quickly. Remember, this is twice the speed. I'm not this fast. And just getting its power stuff. I think they really has the characters are like a Roth or Kirby. And yeah, I'm just kind of going behind him, and I'll go into that logo eventually. That burst, I always like that kind of dry brush burst off of the characters. And you got to get an angle on that. So when I'm doing it, got to go around him. I don't want to get too close to him. And this is all wet on dry. This is not a very heavy watercolor paper. This is a basic kind of multimedia bond paper. So when you do it, can't be too aggressive. So again, just trying to get that. I don't want to lose her. And again, it's just kind of rolling through this pretty quickly. Just trying to be careful. I like my brush because it's at that place where it gives you a little dry brush feel, but it's holding enough of the color that I could do slight details with it. I do think I'm kind of getting into doing these types of images for commissions. I like the logo on top, and it's not like the smaller ones you do for people with the comic books where it's just a cover, and that paper is really meant for markers, not for watercolor. I do it, and I often do them, but you have to kind of fight with it to make sure it doesn't just break up that break up the paper altogether when you put the watercolor on. It can really damage the paper, but if you're delicate enough with it, you can get away with a lot. But with this is really made for multicolor, and it's not something that I'm worried about at this point. I'm just kind of going in and making sure I can finish this thing up. It's almost there. Little bits. I'll touch up all these things. And this is kind of it. This is a quick little fun illustration. The Incredibles versus Syndrome. And thanks for everybody taking a look at the channel. And make sure to click on the links to get to my Amazon store and all of my other ventures. Thanks, and talk to you soon.